In some contexts, it is hard not to feel sorry for the Star Seraph archetype, for as an archetype they've been basically forgotten. The Scepter sovereignty engine is still well known and still used in a number of decks, but the other cards have been largely ignored. One of the problems with Star Seraphs is that Performa Mages basically stole their thunder. Seraphs were supposed to be the 3 or more monster rank 4 deck specialist archetype, but then Performa Mages came into existence and sucked all the air out of Seraphs. Interestingly enough, Seraphs can be an effective deck. Let's see how with this deck build. As is typical, the build starts by looking at the direct support for the archetype. Almost everyone should know this first monster, Star Seraph Scepter. Scepter is the Stratos for Star Seraphs, with the additional effect of producing a typical +2 when used as a material for 3 or more monster XZ summons. What really makes this card especially nice is the fact that it receives its effect whether it's normal or special summoned. Obviously, 3 copies are required for a good Seraph deck. Sage is not very helpful outside the fact that it's a Star Seraph monster. The sheer lack of Star Seraph monsters in general almost makes running this card mandatory to increase the efficiency of the deck. Its effect can be useful once in a while, but one shouldn't really count on it in a pinch due to the resource demands. However, despite all of this, I really don't run this card because I just don't think it's helpful enough. There's nothing unique or special about this card, really beyond the fact that it's a Star Seraph monster. I think there are other cards that help better advance the winning condition for this deck. Scale, on the other hand, is a very nice card for this deck. It will commonly be an important element in setting up your 3 monster XZ summons due to its ability to special summon Seraphs from the hand. Its graveyard return effect is nice. For a large portion of the time, you're probably going to scoop a Scepter, which when you draw it during your next draw phase, you're going to net yourself at least a +1. Finally, while its XZ effect is not as nice as Scepter, it's still efficient and frequently useful. The ability to draw 1 card from the first special summons from the hand on either turn by either player can add up rather quickly, especially because the attack points of the monster you're going to summon with Scale as a material will almost always either demand card effect removal or a special summons, where a fair percentage of the time the latter will net you a card because your opponent's going to special summon from the hand. Overall, this draw effect can add up rather quickly under the right conditions. Definitely run 3 copies. However, it is worth noting that special summoning from the hand on the same turn that this card is used in a 3 or more monster XZ summons will not net you the draw, because it's not the first special summons of the turn. Swords has a poor man's pseudo-honest type of effect, and the problem is it's just not a very good card because you want to use your Seraph monsters for XZ summons. You don't want to leave them in your hand for use with this effect. I think Swords is far and away the worst Star Seraph monster. Scout is definitely a 3-copy monster. Scout does exactly what you want a monster to do for this deck in a very simple and clean way. I don't know really what to say to anyone running a pure Star Seraph deck that doesn't run Scout at 3. The other part of the Splash Seraph engine, Sovereignty, is a 3-copy card. Note that Sovereignty's effect allows it to be special summoned whenever a Star Seraph monster is normal or special summoned. Some people might forget this because their only experience with it has been in the Scepter Sovereignty engine, so they might just naturally think, oh, it only really works with Scepter, where in actuality it works with all Star Seraph monsters. Due to this effect, Sovereignty will typically not sit in your hand very much. The draw is really just icing on the top of the cake, helping move through the deck faster and restore your hand size. Kind of the sad part about the Star Seraph deck is both Star Seraph XZ monsters are alright, but they're not really useful. If number 102's effect was quick play, then it would be worth something, but since it's not, I pass. Personally, I think this is one of the biggest holes in the Star Seraphs, their lack of their own specific XZ. I mean, number 102 only requires generic light. For a deck build construct around large quantity XZ summoning, Star Seraph should have had at least 2 Star Seraph specific XZ monsters that required 3 or more level 4 monsters. It just doesn't make sense that that didn't exist. I mean, it really doesn't make sense that 102 is just generic light, not Star Seraph. Anyways, moving on to the other monsters. For me, there's kind of a mini debate of sorts between Goblinberg and Photon Trasher. The main advantage of Goblinberg is its combination with Scale. The main advantage of Thrasher is its innate special summoning ability and its 2100 attack points. For my taste and experience, I run the 3 copies of Photon Trasher, for as that 2100 attack it's helped me a lot more advance my win condition, advance the game, than the Goblinberg Scales combination. Due to the fact that Scepter, Scale, and Sovereignty all receive their effects when special summoned, 2 copies of Summoner Monk is more than appropriate to increase efficiency. All of the light monsters in this deck supports the idea of running 2 copies of Honest. The effect of Scales also increases the usefulness of Honest in that when it's special summoned, you can put that Graveyard Honest on the top of your deck to set up a high damage play next turn. Finally, since Star Seraphs are fairies, obviously running some Archlord Kristyas is in order. I like 2 copies because it's always that kind of middle ground. 1 copy sometimes isn't enough, 3 copies can be cloggy. When in doubt, go with the 2 copies, and it's worked well for me. Kristya also has that nice Graveyard Edition effect, which can be rather nasty, because in Star Seraph there are a number of cards that want to return to your hands in addition to Honest. So, when you use Kristya's effect to return something from your graveyard to your hand, 99 times out of 100 you're pretty much getting something that's going to be very useful. For the spells, I run my most important 3 staples, 1 Raigeki, 1 Book of Moon, and 1 Soul Charge. While it's available in the TCG, I do run 3 copies of Instant Fusion solely for access to Norden. Note that while the purpose of Norden is simply to increase the probability of XZ summoning, because the special summon monster obviously doesn't get its effect. Let's deviate a little here. On a side note, I think the OCG kind of screwed up by banning Norden over there. They should have banned Instant Fusion instead. For Instant Fusion in an XZ world is just a cheap special summon that basically bastardizes the point of the card. Take a look at Norden's summoning conditions. Summoning this card is not run-of-the-mill. It certainly can be summoned, but it takes a specialized deck to accomplish the summoning. Norden is a lot like Cyber Dragon Infinity. It's a powerful card with a obtuse or difficult summoning condition that really has been cheapened by bridge cards. In this case, the bridge cards are the ones that should be banned, not their destination. So cards like Instant Fusion, Cyber Dragon Nova, Stellarknight Delteros, those should be banned. Not Cyber Dragon Infinity if it ever happened some point in the future, or Norden. But I don't think that's the idea I guess that idea is not shared, because that new rank up card just came out that basically says, Raid Raptors, feel free to have a free Cyber Dragon Infinity. So I just think that you shouldn't design super powerful cards with obtuse summoning condition and then say, oh, well, you could do that obtuse, difficult, needs a very specific deck design summoning condition, or here, you can use this one cheap card that basically costs nothing. It's just kind of sloppy card design. It cheapens the builds. Anyways, after that little mini rant, moving back onto the spells, I like to run 3 copies of Forbidden Lance, because for me, one of the worst things that this deck can happen is you get your Scepter, you get your Sovereignty, you get your 3rd card. I'm going to make my big 3 monster rank 4 XZ, and then he just, right after I summon, he's hit with a Fiendish Chain. He's hit with a Breakthrough skill. So I don't get my compounded effect, and now I get nothing. So I want to protect those big XZ plays that you make. The attack reduction also helps supplement battle protection when Honest isn't available. Finally, I run 2 copies of Mystic Space Typhoon to eliminate standard face-down threats that could influence or negatively affect the large-scale XZ summoning. Closing out with the traps, I run 4 of my general trap staples in 1 Torrential, 1 Bottomless, 1 Solemn Warning, and 1 Ring of Destruction. I run the 1 copy of the quasi-staple Vanity's Emptiness, and again, due to the importance of special summoning in respects to the Star Seraphs, I run 3 copies of Call of the Haunted. For the extra deck, I run the following. Obviously, you have to have the 2 copies of Elder Entity Norden. Due to the importance of getting those additional effects for your 3 monster or more rank 4 summons, we definitely have to add some of those. And again, this is another, if you look at the options, it's kind of the really weak spot. You'd think that card design would say the effects would kind of scale. The more monsters you use, the better the effects. Not really. If you were to list the top 10 rank 4 XZs, at least 8, probably 9 of them would require simply 2 monsters. So that does seem to be the reoccurring theme, kind of the Star Seraph deck, unfortunately, is that you don't have Shockmaster in the TCG, thank goodness, because that card just, I can't believe the OCG has decided not to continue to ban that card. But anyways, there's a kind of a power gap there between the 2 monster requirement and the 3 or more. But anyways, moving on. I do write 2 copies of Delteros. Lots of destruction there. Also, it protects itself when it's summoned, so that's very useful. The 1 copy of Evilswarm Ouroboros. 1 copy of Vylon Disigma. Disigma is kind of a nice card. It's kind of a single attribute El Shaddai construct that can steal a monster when it's summoned. I run the 1 copy of number 32 Shark Drake. This card can commonly put up 2,500 to 3,500 damage with its effect. Then we have to go into the rank 4 staples. 1 Exciton Knight. 1 number 101. 1 Castel. 1 XZ Dragon. I like running 1 Anti-Luminescent Knight. 1 Gagagak Samurai. Because we're dealing with light monsters. 1 Starliege Paladinamo. And I run 1 Daigusto Emerald. Now, I do have to note that I don't run any copies of Stellarknight Delteros, and the only reason for that is just out of personal principle. For I don't think that card ever should have been created with its I can rank up effect, and it also somewhat conflicts with the continuous nature of Scales XZ additional effect. But anyways, if those issues aren't a problem for you, I do recommend you probably should run a couple copies while you can, because who knows, it might be banned pretty soon in the TCG, as well as it was in the OCG. In closing, I think the problem with this deck is really just the lack of good 3 or more monster rank 4 XZs outside of something like Ptolemaios, which, as stated, was just banned in the OCG and really probably should be banned in the TCG at some time. Probably it'll be the first ban list of 2016. This lack of monsters obviously hurts the deck because Star Seraph's high volume monster XZ summoning, specialists. They're supposed to say, well, there's 4 of us, let's go into instead of going to two required rank 4s, let's go into 1 rank 4 that requires 4 monsters. But there aren't really good targets to go into, so it's just typically easier to say, well, I'd just rather go into 2 rank 4s instead of 1 big rank 4. So Star Seraph really should have had at least 1 archetype specific XZ to highlight the general theme and the strength of the deck. However, overall, even despite this kind of lack of attention, this deck can run fairly effectively against the rest of the non-tier 1 crowd due to its speed and the extra XZ effects. If this deck ever got any of the support cards I think they should have gotten, and those support cards are good, it could actually be fairly dangerous to a lot of tier 1 decks when played properly. But as of now, that is certainly not the case, and more than likely that probably never will be the case. Well, that's my Star Seraph deck. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.